And welcome back to Fox 59 tonight. I'm Cameron Ridle inside of our studio with our managing editor, anchor,
Political editor,
political.
political
I gave you a promotion,
political
Dan.
director.
Political
I don't even
director.
I don't even have the title
We gave you a promotion.
right.
In addition to anchor of the evening news and in focus on Sunday mornings, Dan Spehler with bringing Indiana in
There
focus,
you
if you
go.
will.
That's right.
We were
Appreciate it.
a we were a stop from the White
Yeah.
House as they want to make Indiana healthy again.
Yeah.
That probably I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. There's 50 states, and you came here so quickly. Um, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Dr. Oz, along with Governor Braun, making some announcements of some big changes that they want to see Indiana make to improve health, to reduce Medicaid usage, and it's got a lot of people, of course, fired up. Um, Especially that this was one of the first places they came. Why do you think they came here so quickly?
Well, I think the governor certainly has been a big supporter of the Trump administration, and so a lot of his policies have been in step with what the 47th president is doing, the many things that he's doing right now in Washington, for better or worse, and this is obviously an initiative that is very much in line with what the Trump administration is looking at with their Make America Healthy Again initiative, which a play on the MAGA. This is
Mm-hmm.
Maha or
Maha.
Maha, sure. So this is Make Indiana Healthy Again, which I guess would that be
It
Miha
would be
or
Miha if you ask
Miha?
me.
Yeah,
It's Miha.
okay. Either way, it's like you said, the first stop
Mm-hmm.
for the new HHS secretary and for Dr. Mehmet Oz, who of course ran for Senate and lost there in Pennsylvania, but then became part of the cabinet for the new Trump administration, longtime talk show host as well. And so they came here this past week to kind of unveil some of the governor's executive orders, as you mentioned, you outlined those 9 executive orders and some of the things that those will seek to accomplish. But it was also, I think, just interesting to see the reaction to their visit. There were some protesters there. You also had uh, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s visit coming here at a time where you're seeing a measles outbreak around the country, and we've even had some cases here in Indiana as well. And so we faced some questions about that. Or Hannah Adamson asked him about some of his past comments about vaccinations
Mm-hmm.
and vaccines and about the measles outbreak here and about the measles vaccine specifically. And so you'll see some of what he told her about that on In Focus this week as well. But a lot of the protesters who were here felt that they weren't appreciative of some of Mr. Kennedy's prior statements about vaccinations that aren't in line with the medical or scientific community. And so you saw those protesters there along with everyone else who was in attendance at the event this past week. And so you kind of had that dynamic playing out. You even had some of those questions about vaccines. Other members of the media and other people who were there kind of taking those questions pretty directly to Micah Beckwith, too,
Mm-hmm.
the lieutenant governor, who was at the event wearing his Make America Healthy Again hat
Yes, I saw
at
the
the event.
merch.
And so there was a little bit of, it seemed like a little bit of tension at the event about some of those questions about vaccinations, which have sort of been, um, more politicized since COVID, but also, very much a part of this very real conversation now about measles and trying to make sure that measles doesn't spread here in the United States.
Another thing that caught a lot of people's attention was the executive orders. There were 9 that Governor Braun signed. One of them, this is one where you kind of have to read a little bit past the headline, but the governor wants to limit items that can be on the SNAP eligibility list, anything that is understood to have low nutritional value and a positive correlation with weight gain, meaning they're saying junk food,
Yeah, it's candy, things of that nature,
soda.
soda. They want that to not be eligible for SNAP assistance for those benefits. And so that's obviously going to be a topic of discussion. I think Congressman Carson put out a statement about it too, and you've had other people um, also say that, well, we need to make healthier food more available
Hmm.
to people,
Hmm.
because sometimes, in communities where, there are a lot of people using SNAP benefits, sometimes there just aren't as many healthy options available.
Hmm.
Not all the time, but that is a factor here that some lawmakers have pointed to as well. It's it, certainly there's going to be a lot of reaction to anything, in any big executive order like this, especially when it touches on health, things people eat. I mean, there have been comparisons drawn this past week to, when Michelle Obama, as
Hmm.
first lady, advocated for healthier school lunches and got some pushback
Got a
at
lot
the
of
time from
pushback.
Republicans, a lot of
Hmm.
pushback, right? And so this is, I suppose, similar, but in a different way, because
Hmm.
now you're talking about the things that people can and can't access with their SNAP benefits,
Correct.
right? So this is going to be a different, similar but different kind of conversation with now different parties in power.
Well, and to refresh everyone's memory, if you go back to the days of '08, Michelle Obama, what she was trying to do was change the kids' lunches
Right.
because they don't necessarily get to choose what
Sure.
it is they're eating. It's what you're serving
Right.
them.
Right.
Whereas now, as you just mentioned, with SNAP benefits, this is something to where you can choose with those benefits
Right.
what you want to buy. And now this is government saying, well, no, you cannot buy
Right.
X, Y, and Z.
Exactly. And so that's going to be, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm pulling up here Andre Carson's reaction to all of this, because he had a statement on social media about this specific aspect of this legislation. He said that the announcement, claims to address health issues in Indiana, but restricts access to two of the most impactful programs on Hoosiers Health, SNAP and Medicaid.
Hmm.
He said that Hoosiers deserve to have access to that kind of fresh and affordable, healthy food. But he said that the president's policies are, in his words, causing grocery costs to rise, cutting SNAP benefits in some cases. And he said that some of these policies have already cut funding, and that this announcement could push people closer to seeing things like Medicaid cuts. And he also points at how the Trump administration has proposed cuts to school lunch programs, and that the tariffs could hurt farmers. And so, while he says he welcomes any efforts from the state to improve nutritional and healthy eating, he said, further restricting access to SNAP, in his view, was the wrong way to go. And
Uh,
so that's going to be, that's going to be part of the conversation on this issue now.
and much of this is has to do with who these people are who are on Snap and where they are. Big argument is being made up, and you kind of already touched on it. Is that people who are low income um, are in areas. If you think of Indianapolis, where there are not a lot of options for food.
Right.
Good luck finding a
Fresh time.
fresh
Yeah.
time, a
Right.
city market. But what you can find is a gas station
Sure.
that has some soda and a snack for you. If that's,
Right.
that
And
may
that's the
be what's
argument. Those
available.
healthy options just aren't as available sometimes in communities where people might be more adversely impacted, economically, and in need of some of these additional SNAP benefits.
Um, in the meantime, what I wanted to point out to folks with that is that it is not a governor signs this and then boom, you can't go to the store this afternoon and swipe your Snap card and get a root beer. How this will work is that this is the governor asking the Indiana State Department of Agriculture and the FSSA to send up to the federal level that we're in support of banning this because your SNAP benefits wiggled down back through the federal government.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's sort of, it's some of it is, I don't want to say for show, but
Symbolic.
some of it is symbolic or aspirational in terms of what
Hmm.
he'd like to see get filtered down through these federal programs in terms of the impact they have on the states. So, but again, it's going to cause a lot of discussion. It's going to cause a lot of debate, and I think their visit this week did just that.
And I was trying to find exactly the wording, but it says the Indiana Family Social Services Administration, FSSA, will exclude candy and soft drinks from the program. The order states that FSSA will apply for a waiver to exclude candy and soft drinks from the list of SNAP eligible products. If the waiver is then approved at the federal level, the release says that those products will then be eliminated. So this is, I think, aspirational is the
Sure.
better
Yeah.
term to use, because they are asking the federal government that says, hey, we as a state think we should take these off. If you'll approve that, that'd be great.
And again, if I can bring it all back to this revenue forecast news
Hmm.
that we got this week, I mean, that's also leaving a lot of questions about what the state is going to be able to do just in terms of funding, whether it's programs that relate to Medicaid or things that people need for various assistance programs.
Hmm.
Again,
Hmm.
this $2 billion gap in terms of what they thought they would have in terms of state
Hmm.
revenues and might not have is leaving a lot of questions too about programs, assistance programs that the state can budget for in the years ahead. So it all kind of ties back to this financial question in this time of uncertainty right now.
Well, and RFK, Dr. Oz, and they spent quite a bit of time talking the other day about how uh, this is to, one, save money on Medicaid, because that's a big expenditure.
And they
Uh,
may need to save more now.
and they're going to need to
Yeah.
save more, but at the same time, they were saying that, we'll help come up with other ways uh, to make people healthy, but few ways to do anything are free.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's a cost to everything, and there's obviously right now a lot of questions about where the money's going to come from, and that's going to be a continuing question here in not just these 2 weeks, last 2 weeks of the session, but over the next few months with a lot of the uncertainty that we're seeing in the economy.
Now, you mentioned how RFK was received. There's been a lot of he's not a fan of vaccines, and we've got measles that are measles cases popping up around the country. How was Dr. Oz received? Did you hear anything about that? Because there are a lot of people who are still adjusting to, oh wait, this isn't Dr. Oz hosting the TV show.
Right. I think a lot of the attention was more directed at RFK Jr., but Dr. Oz has been a political figure for a little while too,
Hmm.
having been a Senate candidate coming, out of his career there in television and now moving to the world of politics. And he's in a position right now with CMS that we've seen Hoosiers in before. We had a Hoosier in that position during the first Trump administration. So it's an important
Yeah,
role,
Dr.
obviously.
Jerome Adams, right?
Jerome Adams, no, was the Surgeon General. I'm blanking on her name right now, but she was Seema Verma
Okay.
from Indiana
Okay.
was in charge of CMS during the first Trump administration, and it's an important role, right?
Hmm.
And it's another one of those roles that I think opponents of the Trump administration probably pointed to Dr. Oz and asked, is he qualified for this role or not?
Hmm.
So I think a lot of questions about that probably still exist as he navigates his way through this first 100 days of the new Trump administration. He the president does tend to put a lot of people in roles who've had experience in front of on
TV.
camera
Yeah,
before,
we
right? I
we we
mean,
we would qualify for some of these jobs,
I
apparently.
don't know. I qualify for my current job and my current job only. But that people certainly have noticed that a lot of cabinet roles have gone to folks who've been on television before. And I think that's why, some have wondered if Dr. Oz is up for the job, if he's qualified for the job. And so I think some of those questions will persist, and we'll see what happens in terms of actual Medicaid policy under his watch.
Um, Dan, let me ask you about something that I didn't ask you. I was going to tell you I was going to ask about.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about the relationship of what you've heard thus far between Micah Beckwith, the lieutenant governor, who was not the governor's pick, um, and the governor's relationship. It seems overall, I guess there's been so many things happening in the state legislature this round itself that um, we haven't seen too much of those
I
two
think this week was a great example of that.
until this week.
Well, you had last weekend when Micah Beckwith made the statement we mentioned in the first segment about the property tax bill, saying
Hmm.
he thought the governor should veto it. And the governor goes out this past week, signs the bill into law. At the event with RFK and Dr. Oz this past week, reporters we're looking to ask him about Senate Bill 1 now that the governor signed it into law. What do you think about this now? Do you have
Mm-hmm.
anything further to say? You still think he should have vetoed it?
Mm-hmm.
He's been real quiet about that.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we've had all of this other news about the revenue forecast has kind of maybe helped him avoid some of that scrutiny about their separation on this property tax question, because there's been so much going on this week. And at that event with RFK, he said, I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm just here to talk about the event with RFK and Dr. Oz. And so by doing so, he sort of avoided having to talk through that rift that they had on this particular property tax bill question. But I'm sure it's going to come up again. Micah Beckwith, has been a controversial political figure,
Mm-hmm.
but he's also been fairly accessible
Mm-hmm.
to the media. He's usually unafraid to answer questions, but he has so far this week been able to dodge this question about
Mm-hmm.
Governor Braun now signing
Mm-hmm.
the property tax bill into law, and what he thinks about the measure now. Because just last weekend he said, "This is terrible. I don't understand it. I think he should veto it." Um, you've got to imagine that causes a little bit of a rift, but they've been able to, even when they have not been in lockstep. It seems that they have tried to, at least from an optics standpoint, not dwell on that too much.
Do you think that because at the beginning everybody's like, I don't know how this is going to work out. Does
Right.
it seem that maybe they can get along?
I think they try to
Put on the show.
put that face forward,
Okay.
right? But I did hear from um, you know people who are close to politics last weekend, in Republican circles, wondering why in the world Micah came out as strongly as he did against the property tax bill. He didn't think that was a good move
Mm-hmm.
because, again, this is something that was um, a signature platform item for
Mm-hmm.
Governor Braun as he
Mm-hmm.
ran for governor,
Mm-hmm.
and was able to get something
That's
across the
something.
finish line this week. It wasn't
You never get
something that,
anything in any
oh,
negotiations.
absolutely. And every first term governor struggles to get that big item across the finish line their
Mm-hmm.
first year in
Mm-hmm.
office. I mean, everyone who runs for governor has a great idea that they campaign on,
Mm-hmm.
that state lawmakers then want to take a closer look at that first session and say, I don't know, what about X, Y, and Z?
Mm-hmm.
So new governors don't always get their way.
Mm-hmm.
That's a story as old as time in Indiana politics and in other states too. But I think that the governor wanted to get something across the
Mm-hmm.
finish line, and he did. It's going to be about $300 in property tax relief, as we talked about. Micah Beckwith, some others, perhaps to the governor's right flank politically, thought it didn't go far enough, thought it didn't do enough. And, um, you know, it'll be interesting to see how often Micah Beckwith is willing to entertain that question about Senate Bill 1
Mm-hmm.
here moving
Mm-hmm.
forward, because he didn't want to really talk about it this week.
Well, and as he said, he says it's a complicated bill and he doesn't understand. But um, I also am. I will be curious to see once all the dust settles and once everyone is looking at their budgets and your fire department, police, and whoever is saying we have to cut X, Y, and Z. Um, I will be very interested in the public's reaction um, because yes, you're saving on your property taxes, but is that $300, which is a tax credit, as I understand,
Sure.
um, is that going to justify the cuts that you may see, or
That you may see at your child's school district, that
correct?
you may see in your community, right? It'll be interesting to see how that will go over politically, and if people will really find the $300 to be worthwhile to them, or if they'll feel a little bit more daunted by some of the other things that may or may not be happening. And then also, who do they blame for that? I
Correct.
think we live in a day and age where people are very quick to blame whomever they don't feel affiliated with
Correct.
politically.
Correct.
I mean, you saw this past week Governor Braun even putting out a statement about this budget forecast, essentially tying it to the inflation we saw under President Biden, and
Mm-hmm.
saying this is because of Bidenomics
Mm-hmm.
that the state of Indiana
Mm-hmm.
is dealing with this budget uncertainty, when certainly a strong case could be made. It's because of the uncertainty we're seeing right now around tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
That is also, a major factor in why we're seeing that uncertainty right now in our economy. And so I think, politically, especially in a state like Indiana, who are people going to blame for it
Mm-hmm.
if they don't feel good about where it all ends up? We'll see.
We will see. We'll be getting this stuff is happening fast. It's
Yeah.
it's It's one of those things that you talk about it, you sign it. Now, of course, it takes a little while for these bills to go into effect, usually July
Sure.
1st.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but I mean, this tariff stuff continues to
It's
change
changing
every
by the day,
day.
by the
Yeah,
hour,
yeah,
right? And that's why we have a lot to talk about on our show every week.
that's
And you
right.
have a lot to talk about here now on Fox 59 Now. In Focus not only airs Sunday morning on TV, we air it here on the Fox 59 Now app throughout the weekend too. So you can catch
Yes,
it right here on your smart TV as well.
go back and find it, but
Yeah.
you've gotta start your Sunday right. You know, I um, used to do a little Chuck Todd on Sunday
Oh yeah.
morning. Used
Yeah.
to catch
I
catch.
try to watch all the shows.
Yes.
And I think any news consumer should.
Hmm.
We were just talking about people being very siloed in terms of their political
Hmm.
opinions, but I think people get very siloed in terms of the types of media that they consume and different, cable networks that may have different perspectives. I think all of us in broadcast TV still feel that sort of time honored calling to do journalism for the broader
Uh-huh.
community because
Hmm.
we are broadcasting
Hmm.
to everyone,
Hmm.
right? To people on both sides of the aisle, to people in urban areas and rural areas. And so we're broadcasting to everybody. But I
Hmm.
also think as a news consumer, yeah, watch all of the programming like that you can
Hmm.
watch. I watch some of you can't watch them all
Right.
at the same time and
Correct.
really digest them, but I try to watch a little bit of Meet the Press and Face the Nation and
Hmm.
Fox News Sunday and certainly, when it comes to Indiana politics, would encourage all of you to watch In
That's
Focus
right.
on
And
Sunday mornings
at
on
what
Fox
time?
59, 9:30 on Fox 59, 8:30 if you get up earlier. If you want to watch it on CBS 4 before you head out and go to church or whatever you're doing here this coming Easter Sunday. So,
Well, Dan, I hope that you'll come back and sit down with
oh,
us on
we'd love
Fox
to. Yeah,
59 tonight, and we continue to help break down what's happening at the State House. Because, as you said, this stuff is just moving so fast. It's really hard to stay on top of it.
yeah,
Even for us in the news, it's hard. You're trying to write one story, and they're
right.
like, "Wait a minute, that
Yeah,
that's done now. Okay,
right,
hang on, let
exactly.
me rewrite."
There's been a
So,
lot happening. I'm glad that we have this platform now. I'm glad you're here with an hour every night on Fox 59 tonight to kind of break down some important state and local issues for our viewers who want to get more local content in the evening on their smart TVs. I think it's fantastic. I'm so glad you're here doing it.
thank you. And we
Yeah,
only scratched the surface, really, of what happened just this week.
that's right.
We've
Yeah,
got 2 more weeks
yeah.
now that as we've broken down to deal with this budget and as they try to get this under control and have to figure out where they're going to make $2 billion in
It's going to
cuts.
be interesting. It's
It
going to be
will be.
interesting for sure, and we'll be here to cover it here over the next couple weeks.
All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Fox 59 tonight. Again, you can catch Dan every night at 5, 6, and 10
That's
on
right.
Fox
But not
59.
tonight because
Not
of
tonight because I'm on.
football. You've
That's right.
got the news here on the Fox 59 Now app. That's
That's
right.
right. And any other night, that's where you'll find Dan in those time slots. And of course, In Focus on Sunday. But stick around. We'll be back with the news coming up at 10 right here on Fox 59 Now. I'm Cameron Ridle. Have a great night.